Thank you very much for joining me today on the Freedom Driven Landscaper podcast brought to you by the Lucrative Landscaping book. Jim Beson, very happy to have you here today. Would you please tell me a little bit about your journey and your business thus far?
I own Wake Pro Lawn Care, and we are based in Raleigh, North Carolina. We are a residential landscape and lawn maintenance, primarily service business. We've been operating for about 8 years now. Kind of our bread and butter is your very basic, recurring, ongoing services. So weekly lawn mowing, bush and shrub trimming. We have a treatment element, so fertilizer, weed control, lime, and then debris cleanup in the fall. So here in North Carolina, the leaves drop starting in about October, and that keeps us busy through most of the winter. And we sell annual contracts, primarily to single family homes in the residential market.
Cool. And so, what was the motivation 8 years ago? Where were you at? Where were you at then when you decided to get started?
Not really planned out very well.
Okay.
I worked in the corporate world for about 10 years. My background is event management. So I produced live concerts for about 8 or 9 years for a concert promoter. And so I was like the technical backstage sound and lights guy putting on big concerts. And then my other kind of passion is endurance sports. So like triathlon, marathon running, ultra running, things like that. And I used kind of that passion to get a job in um, obstacle course racing. So if you've ever heard of like Tough Mudder or Spartan Race, I worked for Spartan Race for about 3 years. And that job required a lot of travel. And so I was on the road for weeks at a time, coming home, setting up the next event, traveling to an event weeks at a time. And that's when my wife and I got pregnant for the first time. And the challenge of being a first time dad and being on the road was very stressful to say the least. So I very abruptly left that job to come home, support my family, and be present. So I was your stereotypical kid growing up, mowing all the lawns in the neighborhood, borrowing mom and dad's lawnmower in exchange. I paid for the gas; they let me have the lawnmower. You know, made money for saving up for my first car or gas and insurance, things like that. And then went high school and college. But I think that entrepreneurial feeling and desire and kind of stuck with me even 15 years later when I was about 30 and left my job, had a family to support. I was like, let's go for it. I did not study horticulture or landscape maintenance or anything like that, but I knew with the low barrier to entry in this industry, let's have a go at it. And I just bought a truck and trailer and a really cheap lawnmower and had at it, started knocking on doors and got my first client, and it was off and running from there.
Wow. So, would maybe a tricky question, but was it more stressful starting the business or more stressful doing the traveling? Like, was it a relief when you started it, or did you
It
bite off more than you can chew, or how was that?
the it was not it was not more stressful to start the business.
Okay.
I knew I was at a point in my life that I needed to make a change. I couldn't be on the road and be the dad, that I wanted to be. So I it I fortunately had some money saved. So I had a little bit of a buffer. You don't need a lot to start cutting lawns. So that was good. I knew I had a couple months packed away, but the stressful the stressful part became the opposite of what I thought it would be. So to clarify, I thought sales was going to be very, very difficult. how do I get customers? To get that first one, like, oh, I got all this equipment, ran up the credit cards. Now I need customers. When I need employees, that's going to be easy. I'm a nice guy. People are going to work for me. They're going to do an awesome job. I'm going to put an ad out, going to show up and do amazing work. The sales is going to be really hard. And that ended up being the opposites, where once you've got those first couple customers and did a good job, the phone started ringing. The employee part became, and still is, a really stressful and difficult part of the operation. But getting started, like, I'm a full commit type guy. So I knew this is the mission. I'm doing it. Like, there's no like just dip the toe in. It was swing the door wide open and here we go. So making the decision was not very difficult, and it's been great. Raleigh is an amazing market. This is, they like, I think they say 100 people move to Raleigh every single day. So anyone in the home service business that answers their phone and does what they say they're going to do and shows up and does adequate to decent work is kind of fish in a barrel here. So the sales part's been great. Scaling, retaining, recruiting employees. That's kind of the ongoing mission right now.
Right. So what are you working on these days in terms of solving that?
So really making Wake Pro Lawn Care be a top service provider, a top employer to work for. That's kind of become the singular mission. Like, I think that solves a lot of the other problems downline. So if we can be like, okay, customers might hear that we do great work. I want potential employees to hear that we are the great place to work. Because I think employees that are happy and feel fulfilled and feel supported and respected, they stay, they tell their friends, they do great work. And I think that solves this, any scalable issues that we might have going down the road. So we're really focusing on how do we get employees, let's say, zero experience to manager, and what does that roadmap look like from, I don't know how to start a blower, to I can be a route manager, let's say year 2 or 3, and being able to like clearly define to a potential employee in an interview, here's the roadmap. Because I think employees want to be challenged. They want to grow. They want to feel like they can grow as a professional in the industry, not just I cut grass all day. Like, how is this a career? A lot of guys use this business as a stepping stone to maybe something else. I want this to be a place that they can grow and stay. So we don't have that figured out yet. That's kind of like the next 12 to 16 month mission that we're really trying to like put that on paper.
Yeah, no, I think that makes perfect sense. And I totally agree with you in terms of them having a vision at your business beyond just a job. Yeah, because then otherwise their vision becomes external to the business. You want it to be internal. So yeah.
Right.
So I know you're working on it now, but what kind of things do you think you'll do to I mean, I guess there's the training process. That's a big piece of it. And how do you train them to do that? I guess there's also the fact that the business is growing at a rate that you need them as a manager in 16 months or whatever. What else are you thinking of in terms of like, or what would you recommend maybe that you found moves the needle? Because I mean, a lot of guys swear by pay per performance. I'm going to ask you about that too, what you think about
Sure.
that. But yeah, what do you think it takes to make a business? There's the roadmap, there's the upward growth of the business that brings the employees with it. But beyond that, what do you see?
Yeah, definitely want to talk about pay for performance, but I maybe set it aside real quick because we are dabbling in that right now. I think that only solves one of the many issues, but having a clearly defined and documented roadmap. So for example, one thing we're doing is like you pick a map, you pick a trail on the map, and that's either a management role, maybe a sales role, or an entrepreneurship role. Because I get a lot of guys that come in and say, "Hey, I'm just getting my feet wet in the business. I want to start my own company." I love that. Like some people might say, like, "Oh, he's going to like steal my business, or steal all my ideas or my clients, or whatever." When somebody comes in and has the passion to want to start their own business, there's so much grass to cut. I would like to foster that. And I could even bring you through the company and in a few years, help you start your own company, whether that's passing on clients that we don't want or hand me down equipment, and really foster that entrepreneurship goal that a new employee might have. So they come in and can see like, okay, in 6 months, I hit these benchmarks. In a year, I become a foreman, and then I become a field manager. And then you don't get like fired, but you get set free to run your own business. And if I could cycle guys through that process, I can keep them longer and keep them engaged longer. But really having that roadmap of a timeline, 6 months, 12 months, 18 months. So these guys know, okay, in a year, here's where I expect to be, and here's the benchmarks I have to hit. Not just like day in, day out, I do the same thing. I cut grass, I go home. I cut grass, I go home. Like you get worn out. North Carolina, it's a long, long, hot summer, and you see how the guys get beat up by August, September. Like I get it, it's tough. But if there's something to look forward to in growth within the business, that's something that we're trying to foster.
Yeah, before we get to the paper performance,
Yeah.
a lot of guys have like this chicken and egg question that I think would probably be in their mind, especially right now after you mentioned this, because it's this idea of it's really nerve-wracking to make a promise of somebody to be in a management position one day without having the growth to back it up, sort of thing, So like there's that whole like, do you hire somebody or do you grow the company, and which one's first, and how do you think about that?
That's tough because even though we are a growing business, you still can't have, we got like 15 employees. You can't have 15 managers. Like you still need somebody to cut the grass. So one way I look at it is if I have 15 guys ready to be managers, that's an amazing problem to have. And I'll deal with it when that problem is presented in front of me. But yeah, cart before the horse type situation. And it's something we always run into where it's like we're always striving for like optimal efficiency. Like we have just moved to 2-man teams, no matter what, no buts about it. I used to have like a contingent, like a bench, like a third guy, a fourth guy floating around because there's call-ins, there's vacations, there's family emergencies. But at a business our size, it's really hard to justify the cost of these extra guys that aren't adding a lot of efficiency. So that's a really hard problem to solve because you got extra bodies floating around on some days, and then you need them other days. So the scaling part is tough, but we have found a lot of success in the 2-man teams, and coming up with like what I've called like a pod. So you need an extra guy for every like 7 employees, and that usually allows us to be at the profit margin we want to be at, and it covers call-ins, vacations, sick days, things like that. But like I said, if I have a bunch of guys that are moving through the process up the chain and all want to be crew leaders and all want to be foremen and management positions, it's a great problem to have. So
Yeah, no kidding.
just kind of dealing with that as it comes.
Yeah. Yeah. One way that I've heard a lot of people answer that question is the ability to do both at the same time, right? So obviously it's not hire the guy and then get the work, or get the work and then hire the guy. It's do them both synchronously. The key to that is I ask the question. I'm curious about it always, because that's what I focus on a lot, is that client acquisition strategy, and that whole idea of like, we can acquire clients for cheap, but we don't have a lot of control over it. And we can acquire clients for more expensive, and we have a lot more control over it. And the
Mhm.
biggest way to illustrate that could be the difference between SEO and Google Ads, for example. With
Okay.
Google Ads, that's more expensive, but you can turn it up and you turn up the client acquisition with it. SEO, you turn it up and maybe it turns up in 6 months, So it's
Sure.
like, so it's kind of having like that balanced acquisition strategy that matches the growth strategy to be able to scale them both at the same time. Do you agree with that?
I do. And um, one way we can control that, and I found it's a really a good benefit to the residential market, is we have the ability to get rid of clients. Like, clients can fire us, but we can fire clients as well. Um, so we always have like clients on a bubble, meaning like, if let's say we have a labor problem and we're trying to scale, but we lose some guys, or we're trying to get out of a neighborhood, or we have just found that maybe I priced the client improperly. Um, we can scale down our client base to support internal growth or internal training. So, whereas some of these guys in the commercial market might have 2 or 3 crews dedicated to one account and can't really, if they've got a 500 unit townhome, you can't really fire them and support growth, because that would lose, 2 or 3, or that put 2 or 3 um, teams out of work. So that's a big benefit I found in the residential market, is like, it's this little bricks stacking, stacking, stacking. I can bring it down if I need to. I can bring it up. It really has helped with route density, where like maybe I want to break into this one neighborhood and I get 1 or 2 clients, and let's say it doesn't pan out. Hey, Mrs. Smith, sorry it didn't work out. We're not moving into your neighborhood anymore. So it gives us a lot of ability to kind of manipulate the schedule in the residential market.
Yeah, yeah, I like that. I've never thought of that strategy or heard of that to go the other way. Yeah, I like that. So I want to hear what you think about the paper performance before I forget about it.
Yeah. So I found it to work, but let me see how to frame this properly. I already pay my guys really well. I feel like above market. Um, and I have high expectations for efficiency and productivity for the team. So it's really hard for me to dangle this carrot. The carrot's not juicy enough to stay profitable and pay them significantly more. So, I've seen pay for performance where like they have a base rate of a certain amount and then you get a percentage above that. Um, my base rate's already so high that unless they're producing $2,000 a day mowing grass, which is really, really difficult to do, it's hard to convince them to do the extra harder work for $1 or $2 an hour more. So I wouldn't say I've like shot myself in the foot by paying the guys high wage, because I think that's great. It's something I'm really proud of, is the way we compensate our team. But I need to kind of cycle through some new employees and kind of just test it with a lower base rate. But then you're competing with other companies. Let's say I'm advertising 18 an hour. I got to convince a guy in an interview how it works, and they might be like, "Oh, that sounds complicated." You know, John's lawn mowing down the street's paying 20 an hour. I'm just going to go there. Um, So I don't think it's a bad system, but I think it only solves the people that want to work for more money. And that's not the whole picture. Like, we're about culture, we're about team. Like, we have a close knit team, we do fun stuff together. We have a pretty robust benefits package. I think that's important. And all the things like I was talking about earlier with a path to leadership or path to growth. Like, dollars and cents, I think only get you so far. Um, the just the admin side makes me nervous, just to be honest. Like, calculating every job to the dollar, and then being able to show the team why your check is different every week is tough. Like, we switch employees around a lot, so then you kind of start over again. Like, John went with Jack last week, but Jack's off for the on vacation for the week, so then Matt is going to go with John. And like, wrapping my
Yeah.
head around all of the admin scares me
Yeah,
a little bit.
that's
It's
tough. Yeah,
it's just a lot
there's
to
some
swallow.
there's some pretty cool tools out there that I've been made aware of recently that manage all that for you, but I'm not sure how intrusive it is in terms of like if you have to use their whole CRM or whatever for it to work.
Right.
Yeah, the other thing that I've always been a little bit hung up on the pay per performance idea is that, well, I did do a hybrid of pay per performance with my business a long time ago, and it worked pretty well, except it confused people, which wasn't good because they want to know, like, what am I getting paid? I don't want to mess around with that.
Exactly.
But the funny thing that I haven't quite figured out is that if you're charging, I don't know, unless there's something I'm misunderstanding, I don't know how they're actually making more money. They're making more per hour, but at the end of the day, it's the same amount of work weekly for the most part, right? So it would be just, so it's hard to say that you're going to make more. It's not really true. It's like you're going to make more per hour. And that's why a lot of guys like paper performances, because their margins are locked in, and it puts a lot of onus on them to make sure that they have the jobs bid properly in the first place. Otherwise, it's the team that takes the hit on it. But yeah, that idea of making more, you're not really making more. You're kind of just making more per hour. So I guess it's, you can work faster, but then you motivate people to cut corners. I, I've heard people really like it that their margins are locked in, and I've heard people say that it's really good for hiring in terms of attracting a performance oriented culture, because a lot of guys who aren't interested in that aren't going to do it, right? So you're going to get the guys who are there to work. So I guess if you're really trying to protect your margins, and I don't want to call it lazy, but it does seem like a little bit of like an absolution of responsibility, or is that the right word? Absolution of responsibility to pass on to the team, but then it's still
Mhm.
sort of yours in the bidding. Yeah, it's a tricky topic. It's
Yeah.
interesting. Yeah.
I think if you have a really low alternative, if you're paying $10 an hour or pay for performance, you're going to only think about pay for performance.
Mm.
But I don't think you're going to get anyone in the door that thinks they might end up only making $10 an hour.
Right. Well,
And
the
then
way
you're
that
right.
guys sell it typically is they'll say, somebody was saying on a podcast just recently, he was saying how here's how long it takes me to do an average number of lawn mows, and I'm slow and you're going to be way faster than me. And so the way that they present it is, on average, our team makes this much per hour. Forget the base rate. They'll never mention that. They'll just say,
Yeah.
this is what you should be making if you're hitting
Yeah.
our efficiency targets. And I think that they're, from what I've seen, it seems like they're able to pay more typically than businesses that don't use paper performance, even
Mhm.
businesses that pay well, just because they're attracting a type of people who are like ready to rock and roll, and the margins are locked in. So there's not any risk for them, and there's a lot of motivation for them to move quickly. So in the end, they can end up making more per hour. But yeah, no, I don't know how you could really split test that, because I think, yeah, at the end of the day, though, you really don't want people who are just money oriented. You want them to be there for
Right.
the culture. You want them to be
Right.
there for more than that. So I guess the question is, does the paper performance really enhance the culture, or does it turn it into more of like a kind of a cutthroat kind of environment? Yeah.
Yeah. And I think you're exactly right. Because only the hourly goes up. So one way to convince the guys to do pay for performance is you're going to make the same amount, but in less time. So how do you value your time? So the guy that's trying to get home to his kid, and if you can get your 9-hour day done in 7, you're going to make the same, but you're going to have to bust your butt really hard to do it. So am I
Right.
trying to do that? Then am I trying to and it's 102 and humid and I'm going to make the same amount and it's a 2-hour difference? That's a
Yeah.
hard thing to convince. And exactly to your point is um, the culture, because my best guys that make 25 plus an hour, they don't need pay for performance because they're the best. They've been
Mm.
with me forever. They know what is expected and they do it. And those are the guys I just want to find organically and train them up to be that efficient and to be that passionate about serving the business. So I think the culture fix serves you better than just here's $1 more. You're
Right.
just throwing money. Because if you just threw money at your business and that fixed everything, this would be so easy, right? You could just
Yeah.
be because you could just put it into an Excel sheet and be like, okay, if I paid a guy 23, this is what I get. If I pay a guy 26, this is what I get. And all problems would be solved. But we're human, we're people, and there's so much more to that than just throwing dollars at people. So I'm not
Yeah.
totally against it. I just need to explore more. So it sounds like you've kind of been through that journey already, and I'm kind of in the thick of it now. But again, I keep going back to it. I want to be an amazing company to work for. That's our mission. I think that means we're going to do great work. I think that means we get referrals not only through clients but through employees as well. And to me, that's a source of pride. Is when somebody goes home to their wife and been like, "We had a great day at work today for X, Y, and Z reasons." That's my source of pride.
Yeah. Yeah. How do you track and manage efficiency then with the way that you have it set up?
So through this pay for performance exercise, we have a dollar value for every service now, and we do it. Setting it up was painstaking, but now it's just a little bit of data entry every day. And we kind of have a red, yellow, green light system where if they're beating the budget, they're a green. Yellow's close, red is we need to look at it. And I have an administrative worker in our office who does sales with us, and him and I together will look at every single job every single day, and we're going to figure out why it's not green. Is it I did a bad job budgeting in the quote? Is it we're training a new guy? Okay, that makes sense. Did Mrs. Smith come and talk to him for 20 minutes about their hydrangeas? Whatever, we'll figure that out. And then we're forecasting way better. Okay, we got this sod job. This is what sod costs now. We need X machine. It costs this much. So these are obvious things that for many years I did not do. I would just be like, this is how much we're charging and I hope we make money. Cross your fingers, let's do a good job. We're definitely in a position now where that's not going to fly to get to the next level in our growth. So we are really, really diving into the numbers. It's a series of projections. And then after every job, especially landscaping jobs that are bigger numbers, is going back and being like, where did we fall short? Where did we miss? We needed to charge more. Did we need that extra machine that costs $400 for the day? Coming up with labor numbers per size of the job. Okay, 10 yards of mulch does not need 10 guys. That's crazy. We can do 10 yards of mulch with 3 guys. Here's the data. They did 10 yards in 3 hours with 4 guys. That made money. Documenting that. So diving into the numbers is the last year has been super critical in making sure we're hitting our numbers.
Yeah. How do you track those times? Do you use an app or do you have the team to clock in and out or?
Yeah. So most of that is actually just done with our truck GPSs. So all of our trucks have just the the plug-in to the truck computer, and you can see their stop and start times. We do have a CRM that could track it if they wanted to manually clock in. We've not been good about using that, but being a small company is pretty easy to just see, like, okay, John's truck stopped at Mrs. Smith's house. He's got 10 yards of mulch, and you can see when he leaves, and he had 4 people on his crew. So very easy to kind of back into that math and see, okay, this is the man hour, the man hour we're charging. This is how long it took. And then it's just Excel sheets, just like very simple. Just did we hit budget on this job? So just like that. And we're kind of at a crossroads on stepping up our CRM software. We just use Yardbook for routing and QuickBooks for accounting, and it's been fine for us, but I would like to explore something a little bit more sophisticated than that.
Yeah,
Like,
because I guess
what have you found to be useful?
oh well, it's a can of worms for me to recommend a CRM because a lot of people don't like a lot of the options. But I used Service Autopilot for a long time, and
Yeah.
what was good about it, skipping the bad things, and when I used it a while ago, and it was pretty solid when I used it. I guess it's changed since then, but the big thing that made a bit difference for me was being able to track the drive time as well. Do you watch that too in the GPS?
Religiously,
Yeah,
all
yeah. So
day on my phone and on my desktop. Like, I'm just looking, where's everybody? How long have they been there? Where are they going? Why did they stop there? Why did they go to lunch 25 minutes away from where they're supposed to be? Like, I'm obsessed. All that stuff.
yeah. Yeah, there's that, but with Service Autopilot, the way that it worked is you can clock into the drive. So as soon as you complete the last job, you're clocking into the drive to the next job, and then you clock into the actual job. So now you have the drive time and the labor time for each job, and that made a big difference for my stuff when we start analyzing. Well, I've said this story so many times, so apologies to everybody who's heard it already, but I thought that I knew the profitability. I mean, at a lot of the time, I was doing a lot of the work even. So I had been on all the properties, even if I'm hiring people, I had mowed them at one point or something. And so I thought I knew. And so we're telling all these little old ladies, like, yeah, sure, we'll do the extra work for you because we think they're profitable. And then we're telling other ones, like, no, sorry, we're gonna have to charge you more if we're gonna do anything. And and then we went and ran all the numbers, and man, was I wrong.
Yeah.
There were ones that we're bending over backwards for that had never been profitable, and ones that we're telling that we're giving a hard time to who we're super profitable on, and wow, it was not accurate. So that the big thing I learned there was like the difference between like statistically significant data and my opinion or my feelings about it. I don't trust my feelings anymore. The other thing that we learned was the seasonality shift in the times. So, in the spring, it takes 25% more time than it does in the hot of the summer, or maybe even more than the hot of the 25% more than average. And then in the summer, it might be 25% less than average when it gets dry. So that was really cool to see, because then that allowed us to have a lot more of an objective view when we were training new employees. Like, are you slow because you're new, or are you slow because it's spring? And so that really helped a lot. But yeah, no, that was actually the beginning to my falling in love with marketing. Was we started doing better customer feedback surveying, and got a whole bunch of conflicting information, and it was like, who do we listen to? Like, people want one thing, other people want something else, and so we segmented by the most profitable and the least profitable clients, and then we basically ignored the feedback from the least profitable, and then pretty much copied word for word what people wanted from the most profitable. And that really opened my eyes up to our inaccurate perception of our markets that we work in, where I thought, I know the market, they're calling me all day every day, of course I know who they are. No, I didn't know. All I know is who I'm attracting that's calling every day. All the people who I'm not speaking to, they're not calling. And so in my mind, they just didn't exist. But then when we started changing the messaging, all the doctors and lawyers started coming out of the woodwork. When we did only pre-authorized credit card for maintenance work. And then that filtered out all the like tire kickers. They hated pre-authorized, and
Yep.
I loved that they hated it, because as soon as somebody had a problem, it was like, well, see ya.
All right.
So that made a big difference. And then yeah, then that actually, back to that idea of like that upward growth spiral, that is what attracts employees. It was having the margins to be such a healthy company, that everybody knows that we're on an upward spiral, and that we're
Yeah.
working with great work, and we're not putting up with trash, and we're not, we're not rushing employees through properties that look like trash. You know what I mean? And
Mhm.
like that kind of stuff, like that really made a big difference in the culture. Yeah, that really helped.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah, to that point, we've actually had some employees leave, which they thought they were leaving for bigger companies that were going to have bigger opportunities. And I think they kind of got overpromised and underdelivered. And I think a testament to the kind of the culture change that we've had is they very quickly called back to
oh,
come.
cool.
They're like, hey, it was not what we expected. One of them was Brightview, which, the biggest company in the world for landscaping. Um, very quickly realized that the culture and not breathing down the employees' necks to get jobs done and allowing them to do the quality work that we expect. I think is a testament to some of the culture shifts that and progress that we've made for them to come back, which is fantastic.
Yeah. How are you thinking about marketing these days, in terms of, um, what is your process, or what is your thought process around growth, or even strategy? Do you have a process where you set targets or something like that? If you could
Yeah.
talk to that. Yeah.
So we're laser focused on density. So having dug into those numbers that you were talking about, like with Service Autopilot, looking at the drive times, um, and looking at the profitability of every single stop that the guys do, all of our double and triple and quadruple stops, it's just like, holy crap, we make so much more money when the truck doesn't move. And so we drew a hard line geographically, like never ever are we moving out of this zone. We're not, just because it's like some super cool property, we're not taking it, even if it's like 1 block away from our dead zone. Um, we're slowly narrowing in, slowly narrowing in. So to your question, marketing, we are only taking properties that are within like 3 minutes of an existing property. Ideally, we're just same street, next door neighbor. So we do a lot of 5 arounds, handwritten letters and postcards to all the neighbors on the street. We get their address, we get their name, and we hit them like 3 or 4 times a year. And then we're exploring this, but I'm new to geolocation, like target marketing. I've done a little bit of exploration. It's super expensive for what we want to do, but you can hire a marketing company. They can pull all of the cell phone data for a geographical location, and then you could target them. So we might do that this winter. But other than that, like I only want super, super targeted geographical locations. Um, so we don't really do AdWords. We don't really do Facebook. Um, our SEO is okay. Like we come up pretty high in an organic search, but we want the next door neighbors. That's it. Like the drive time kills you, is low margin. Mowing is low margin, so we can really boost that if we get the whole street.
Yeah.
So
Why
that's
don't
really
you
our
do
primary focus.
why don't you do the paid ads with those, can be geo targeted
Paid ads through who?
through Facebook or Google?
Because it's not. It'll be in our zone, but if I'm going to spend $1, I want it to be on a next door neighbor. Like Facebook won't. Facebook will give me a radius,
Mhm.
but Facebook won't tell me 123 Main Street, where I can write a postcard to 123 Main Street.
Hmm.
Um, I'm not opposed to it, but I'm just thinking about like if I'm going to spend the time and the money, I want it to be exactly to the address, and that's where you can get geolocation marketing. But oh, we do to that point EDDM as well.
Mhm.
So you're in Canada, right? It might be different, but um, USPS can send out postcards to specific routes. So I'm sure you know what that is.
Yeah, same thing in Canada, and
Yeah.
I'm familiar with this. Most of the people I work with are American. Yeah,
Yeah. Okay.
I'm in Mexico now.
Oh,
I don't
nice.
live in Canada for now,
Oh,
but
okay.
yeah, neat. Yeah, no, interesting. Yeah, I've had a lot of luck with the geo targeting on the on the Google ads in terms of client acquisition costs. How do you think about that in terms of like, do you track or do you have like a window for allowable client acquisition cost and these kinds of things?
Um, Honestly, like whenever we start marketing, the phone call, most people find us organically through a Google search, and they come in fast enough at our rate of growth that like we marketing often gets set aside. And it's not because like, oh, we're so awesome that people just call us. It's more of like the scale ability that we talked about, cart before the horse. Okay, the phone rings and there's 10, we do 10 quotes a day. I can really only take one or two a day to serve the team that we have right now. So it's like I don't need I don't need to overspend at the moment. We're not on a huge trajectory. The goal right now is like management team, culture, efficiency. And when I have that right, then I'm probably going to earmark some serious dollars for marketing. But like we kind of raced to the point that we're at right now. And we kind of need to take this is kind of like our collect our thoughts year of okay, we're good. We're great. We're doing people are calling, people like us. I think we have a great team. How do we get the next few million in the bank and do it right so that it's not stressful, so that we're prepared for it, so that we're going to do it efficiently. So I'm not really earmarking a lot of dollars to marketing right now. It's just the phone rings. We're really like our prices are raised so we can the tire kickers. We have a pretty thorough screening process. We ask a lot of like, are you sure you want to do this questions? Like, this is how we do it. You got to commit to a year. It's going to cost $4,000 a year. Are you sure? Okay, is this really what you want to do? Before we even go look at the house, just to get rid of all those tire kickers. It saved us a lot of time because you think about sending a guy to a house to talk to the homeowner, send the quote, take the measurements, and they really just wanted you the like once a month $20 lawn cut guys. Like, no, we can save all that time on the phone. So we're really preparing for like super growth in 2024 right now. And I think the geo marketing is something I'm going to explore a lot more.
Yeah, no, I'm interested to follow up with you and see how that
Yeah.
goes. I'm really curious about that. Yeah, I'm always watching the client acquisition cost numbers across the different channels and seeing how they compare against different companies and different territories. And yeah, it's fascinating to see. Yeah, really neat to track. I do a lot of attribution tracking stuff. So
Hmm.
I have some pretty intense systems for being able to actually figure out what the person did before they bought and then reverse engineer all that to figure it out. But
It's something I'm not good at, but haven't needed to do at least.
yeah.
And I'm sure I'm leaving a lot on the table, but um, it's just the leads come in, and it's just a testament to I think just to the work that we do and the culture that we bring. So I it excites me though too that it's kind of an untapped resource to really project us into the next phase of our company. So I'm like super excited to explore that. But I kind of know my lane, and marketing is not my lane. So this is definitely going to be like a consultation outside hire type situation.
Right. Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. Yeah. And I appreciate what you mentioned too about sort of the stage of growth that you're in right now. I think of it in terms of like bulking and cutting for working out.
Exactly.
Yeah. So,
Exactly.
so you're in a cutting stage right now. So
Yes,
you'll take the calories that come, but you don't really need them. Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah. And then if
Good
you're in
way
a
to put it.
bulking stage, then yeah, you lower profitability to increase growth. Yeah. The key to all that I found for anybody listening is the ability to project it. So like in an untested marketing strategy is really scary to go into if you're like thinking, okay, we're going to hire 10 guys, we're going to crank this new idea and well, hopefully it works,
Exactly.
great way to mess up culture because
Yeah.
if it doesn't work or works better than you expect it to work, either way sucks because either it's too much work or not enough work for the team. It's like being able to there is sort of a benefit there of being able to predict it accurately. There's
Mhm.
a lot of guys, they'll work in the world of the big difference I see is companies, there's two sort of approaches. The most common one is to reduce cost of acquisition as much as humanly possible, thinking that they're increasing margins.
Mhm.
The alternative way to that is to know your client lifetime value, know how that value is spread out over time, and then come up with a window of allowable cost of acquisition. And it's such a night and day difference because the people who are just going for the lowest, the weird thing that often ends up happening is the lowest cost of acquisition often ends up being a lower value client.
Right.
So you're not really that much further ahead than if you maybe spent more to acquire a more valuable client. But the problem
Yeah.
is that people don't know the numbers, so they can't play it there. And so you're forced to play this game of like, how do we cut costs? How do we cut costs? How do we make marketing as cheap as possible? As opposed to, hey, we can spend $500 per client that we sign up. Maybe we don't want to if we don't have to, but like if we want to grow faster, we spend the top end of that window. We spend the full 500 and we crank the system. If we want to grow slower, we spend the bottom half of that and we're a bit more profitable. But by having that window, it gives you that leverage of the
Mhm.
control of the speed. When you don't have the window and you just go for lowest, then now you have no more room for change to be able to pull that lever to be able, it's more of an accelerator. You lose the accelerator if you just go as cheap as possible. If you have a
Yeah.
window, now you have an accelerator that you can control to modulate the growth. Because that's the other thing I've seen is like this idea of cutting versus bulking sort of thing. A lot of companies aren't really aware of where they're at in that, and then what happens is they kind of just take what comes to them, and a lot of this is organic as well. So what I call it sort of this idea of this seasonal roller coaster where
Mhm.
it's like insane in the spring and then sort of drops off in the summer and then it's boring through the winter and then back to insane. And what I found is that this is one of the best ways to wreck company culture is to not have a smooth growth incline, and to be subjecting your team to this like chaos. But what a lot of people don't realize is if you can work within that window and then you have that accelerator, when it's slow, you push the accelerator down and speed things up. When it's fast, you back off on it and let things come down. And then you can modulate your growth. And
We do
that
that.
is a big thing.
We do that all the time in our office. Like,
Yeah.
and back to we green light, yellow light, red light situation where we'll close too many clients in a row. I'll be like, what's going on? Like, is it just busy? And I'll just say, crank up the price a little bit, crank up the price a little bit. Because I really want 40 to 50% close rate. And that doesn't sound great, but people always talk about like, what do you charge? What do you charge? What do you charge? I charge as much as possible that the market will allow for the level of service that I think we provide. Like we provide a great service, so we're going to charge a great price for us for what we're worth.
Mhm.
So exactly, we're able to modulate that growth. And then, another thing is whenever we're not hitting numbers, I think about, okay, cut, save, cut. But no, like I think it's way better structurally to sell your way out of problems than to save your way out of problems. Like, let's hit sales numbers to support this growth or get out of this problem, then cut. Like you can't, like you're not gonna make $1 million by cutting Starbucks out of your life. You're gonna make $1 million by selling $1 million. Like you can't save your way to like success to a certain point. You got to cut fat, but um, yeah, to your point about the modulation, that's another great thing about the residential market too is you can just raise prices a little bit, and it's always just testing the market. Like you know your numbers, you know what you got to make, but if you get too many yeses in a row, like that's not always a good thing. Like you're probably underselling yourself.
Yeah, no, and actually, you mentioned maybe the 40% doesn't sound good. It actually sounds dead on to me. And
Yeah.
based on a lot of companies and numbers that I track, yeah, usually we aim for 50%.
Yeah.
If they're a really high end company, then 40, then it'll be 40%. If
Mm-hmm.
they're trying to be, I mean, I don't really work with many like budget companies, but they would probably be 55, 60% maybe.
Right.
I don't know. I would if you're closing more than 50%, I'd start to get nervous. Then there's always the guy that says, "Oh, I close 80%, 100% all day long," and I know that you're getting 100% referrals, which means you have no control over the rate of your growth. So I'm not really interested in that too much.
Right.
But so I'm seeing our time is ticking down here. Did you
Okay.
have any last ideas? Doesn't have to be earth shattering or anything that you want to touch on before we take off here?
Yeah, I mean, not earth shattering, but probably not thought about is be really good at the basics and you'll get yourself to the top 5 or 10% of companies in your market. And basics meaning like super basic. Do you answer the phone? Can you speak intelligently? Do you show up for your meeting? Do you follow up? And that's just, client facing, but and take care of your team. Like golden rule, most of us have worked for somebody else before. How would you want to be treated as an employee if you were the employee of your own company? Like in this decision you're about to make, how would you want to be spoken to? How would you want to be treated? Are you being treated with respect? Employees get it, that it can be stressful and you got tough decisions to make, but are you, these people, like, you serve your team, you serve your employees, like you don't have a company without them. um would you want to be an employee of your own company? I think that's a question I ask myself all the time in like stressful situations where I'm like losing my patience about something and I take it out on somebody who probably doesn't even deserve it. And I'm walk back and be like, man, I was a jerk in that situation. Like, take a step back and be like, would you work for your company? And if you can get a lot of those basic things right, I think you'll do just fine.
Good. Thank you very much for coming and speaking with me today.
Yeah. Thanks, Chris.